Let's go ahead and start working on the particle side. Now for it, let's go ahead and get out of this scene. Be sure you've saved it. So we'll save, we'll just push Control N, create a new scene. Go ahead and push Control S to save. And go back into your level design, scenes. And this one, let's just call this particles. So we'll take a look at how to make some particles. We'll just do some of that kind of like the little pixie stuff that hangs in the air and floats around. We'll take a look at it, and we'll also look at a more advanced fire effect that Unity's put together. Inside the particle effect, we need to create a particle. We're not going to get too into the particle itself. We'll look at some numbers to put into it and some variances that we can apply for it. In the hierarchy, under Create, just go to your, for this part, just go all the way down. You'll see Particle System. When you place a particle system in for Unity, it's going to have a default particle stream. It's just simply creating from a one spot and going out. Over in the inspector side, you'll see that you can have all your options available right here. This is basically the same thing as going into the open editor and seeing it. The advantage of this one is you can have multiple and kind of keep track of where everything's going. Ours is singular, so we'll go ahead and just stick with this. On the bottom right inside of your scene, you're going to notice you'll have a pause, stop, and a simulate. You can actually start and stop your effect when you're working on it. Inside of the rollout, what we want to do is actually just create a basic particle effect. So we're going to start with our material. We don't want to use the default one. If you go over to your textures, what you'll notice is that you have a particle 1 and a particle 2. For this one, let's go ahead and just do the particle 2 here. I'm going to create a new material inside our material folder. If you just right click on materials and do create and go down to the material, and let's just call this one particle 1, then just push Control D and call it particle 2. We'll go ahead and get both particles set up. So particle 1, if you have the particle material selected, just left click and drag the particle over to the open spot, or you can click the select button and choose it from there. Both the particle types, the shader, go down to particles, and we'll just do the additive. And then same thing for particle 2, drag the particle 2 material over, texture over to the material. Shader is going to be particle, additive. Alright, so now that we have our two particles in, let's go back to our particle system. And let's go ahead and call this one, let's rename particle system and call it particle 2, since that's what we're going to start with. We want to drag our particle 2 material over to the rollout. If you go right below the add component and you let go, it'll replace that one for you. So now we have a different particle that's actually streaming out here. Alright, so this one, let's go ahead and go into our rollout. Let's start working through the effects on it. First one, let's get our shape right. Instead of using the cone, let's use a box for the shape. And for the size, eventually we want it to fill that whole space. So we'll do a 50 by 50 by 50. We'll go ahead and kind of create a really large area for it to exist in. And then, you could have it actually follow the player so that you don't have to make such a huge one to encompass the entire environment, or you could have it the effect where it's just simply looking at the camera view and the camera is actually the only thing really seeing it. But for now, we'll go ahead and just create one that goes across and kind of fills up the whole environment. For the shape as well, the random direction, go ahead and check that one as well. So we just want it kind of floating around. Instead of all of that one directional, now it's just kind of giving that wispy fill to it. Up at the top, the duration is currently set for 5 seconds. It's going to be how long does one type of effect last inside of the loop. We'll say it's going to last for 15 seconds. We'll go ahead and have our looping set. That way when it gets done, it's going to continue to do it again and again. The start lifetime, we'll go ahead and do 15 as well. There we go. So now we'll have a little bit more going on, but we don't necessarily need this many showing. We just want a couple, but we want them lasting longer. So we'll take the start speed, we'll set this one down, and then it's going to be, we'll start it at 0, and then we'll start moving it a little faster with our ending part. The start size, let's take it about half of that size, and this may change once we kind of see the player next to it walking around. Alright, we have a start rotation. Let's going to go ahead and set it to about 180. That way we're actually looking at a little bit of a difference between them. And for the start, all your properties right here, you can actually change anything that's a little drop down. You can do one, or you can do multiple. You can either base it on a number or a curve. We'll do two numbers. We'll actually do a positive 180, and then we'll do a negative 180. Alright. Now, the gravity and the inherent velocity, we'll just keep these from, we're not necessarily wanting to make it fall downward or anything like that. When we get with this one, the max particles, instead of being 1,000, let's take this down. We just want just a few. We don't want to see all over the place. We just want about 20, maybe 100 once we get it into the scene and see. Alright, so once you have those, let's go down, let's go ahead and roll. I guess we can keep that one up. The emission side right here, instead of emission at 10, let's go ahead and take this down, and we'll just do it at a burst. So instead of being constant, let's go ahead and just do a burst rate, and we'll put the burst at about 50. This is saying that when at every so often a certain amount of time, you can have a burst of particles come into the scene, and you can set as many as you like and set them for a time that you like on it. Alright, so we've already done our shapes on this one. The velocity over lifetime. So how do we want to set this one? Let's say, for instance, we want to actually create a little bit of a movement to it, but just enough over the lifetime of it that we get a sense of feeling to it. We could do, how about we do the between random curves, just so we can see a little bit of a difference on it here. There we go. So there's just enough between two curves that we're kind of getting a nice little feel for it. The curve itself, you can actually adjust down here. You could pull it up or down if you want it to move a little bit faster, but this one's moving just enough on a slow pace. Kind of hangs in the air. The other option we want to do is change our size by speed. So we're going to make this one go, so on the size option right here, let's actually make it go a little bit. Let's see, we'll do random between, actually we'll just do one curve on this one. So on the curve with this, let's take this and have it go down just a little bit. I'm going to move the line up right here. I'm going to right click inside of here and do add key, and I'm going to pull this one down just a little bit. There we go. So they'll shrink just a little, so as they go down through their life cycle, it'll shrink and then it'll grow, just kind of soft like. Alright, so then we have a slight up and down to the movement of it. Alright, and then when it comes to rotation, let's actually have these rotating a little bit more than they are. So right now, beforehand, they were, oh, not render, but rotation. They're really just kind of static. They're coming out at different angles, but they're not rotating. So we'll rotate them and have them moving around like that. Alright. So that should give us just about all the little pieces we need for it. We have some slight movement with it. We have our curve growing up and down for it. The inside of our render option, we have our texture assigned to it. The only other element that we could change up would just be the tint color. If we wanted the tint color to be maybe a little bit more of a nighttime soft blue tone to it. There we go. So that's going to give us our first one. And in order to be able to use this in the other scene, let's go ahead and close up our level designs, we'll notice we have our prefab over here. I'm just going to left click and drag my particle 2 over to the prefab folder. That way we make a nice simple prefab out of it. Alright, so the next one we want to do is that first particle, and we'll do that one coming up.